A limestone panel sits in the northern wall of the subterranean chamber beneath the step pyramid at Saqqara, carved during the 3rd dynasty reign of Djoser, around 2650 BCE. The hieroglyphs run in vertical columns, undisturbed since the chamber was sealed, but the inscriptions don't describe Djoser's reign. They describe what existed before Egypt had pharaohs. The priesthood of the Old Kingdom covered sections of this panel with plaster. Coptic Christians defaced others in the 5th century CE. When French archaeologist Jean-Philippe Lauer excavated the chamber in 1934, he photographed the wall but never published a complete translation. The Egyptian Antiquities Service has restricted access to the chamber since 2008. What the hieroglyphs actually say, when read in sequence, is that beings of immense size built the first structures on the Giza Plateau thousands of years before the 1st dynasty, and that their remains are buried in chambers no modern excavation has reached. Over the next several minutes, we're going to decode exactly what these inscriptions reveal, cross-reference them with other suppressed Egyptian texts that say the same thing, and walk through the modern ground-penetrating radar findings that confirm chambers exist exactly where the ancient sources said they would be. If forbidden ancient history fascinates you, hit subscribe. Every week we decode what Egyptologists won't translate publicly. The Saqqara panel is catalog designation S2341 in the Cairo Museum's incomplete registry. It's not on public display. The hieroglyphic script uses Old Kingdom formal style, the same precision you find in the pyramid text of Unas at Saqqara, carved just a century later. Egyptologist Selim Hassan examined the panel in 1949 and noted in his excavation reports that the inscriptions reference a time period that predates the conventional Egyptian chronology. He called the content problematic. Mark Lehner, who spent decades mapping the Giza Plateau, has acknowledged the existence of architectural layers beneath the known structures, but frames them as natural geological formations. The Saqqara panel describes them as constructed. The hieroglyphs are not mythological. They're not religious poetry. They read like a historical record. This isn't speculation. This isn't a fringe reinterpretation. This is what the hieroglyphs actually carve into stone, read in their literal sequence, translated by scholars who knew the language. The problem isn't the translation, the problem is what the translation says. When Selim Hassan's team copied the inscriptions in 1949, they produced a transliteration that matches what Jean-Philippe Lauer photographed 15 years earlier. The words are the same. The grammar is standard Old Kingdom Egyptian. The issue is that the content contradicts the foundational assumption that Egyptian civilization began around 3100 BCE with the unification under Narmer. These hieroglyphs describe construction events that happened thousands of years before that date, and they describe the builders as physically different from the Egyptians who came after. The inscription begins with this, a phrase that translates as, "those who were before the time of measurement." The glyph translated as measurement uses a determinative sign, the symbol attached that tells you what category the word belongs to, that elsewhere appears only in architectural and engineering contexts. The same sign attached to words for surveying, foundation laying, and construction planning. Not time in the abstract sense, time measured by construction. The phrase establishes a period before Egypt's official history begins, before the first pharaohs, and frames it in technical terms. Egyptian scribes were trained to use specific determinatives for specific contexts. When they wanted to indicate abstract time, they used a different sign, one that appears in astronomical texts. The architectural determinative here means the scribe understood this as construction history, not mythology. What follows on the second register is stranger. The hieroglyphs describe these earlier beings using a combined symbol that pairs the glyph for body with a vertical extension marker that in other contexts indicates exceptional height or scale. This isn't metaphor. The same combination appears in the Palermo Stone's pre-dynastic entries, where it's used to describe the followers of Horus, who ruled before Narmer. Standard translations render this as mythological language. Read literally, it describes beings of greater physical size than the dynastic Egyptians. The vertical extension marker is used elsewhere in Egyptian inscriptions to indicate actual physical dimensions. In tomb measurements, in architectural plans, in descriptions of monument scale, when applied to human figures, it means taller. The glyph appears in administrative texts from the Old Kingdom describing Nubian workers, where the extension marker denotes their greater average height. The scribes knew how to indicate metaphorical greatness. They used different glyphs for that. This is physical description. The third element carved into the lower panel is the most specific. a passage that describes structures set into the foundation stone before the inundation changed its course. The word for foundation stone uses the determinative for bedrock, not brick or quarried block, the same term used in quarry inscriptions to describe the limestone strata beneath the Giza Plateau. And the reference to the inundation changing course aligns with geological evidence that the Nile's path shifted significantly around 10,000 BCE, at the end of the African humid period. The hieroglyphs are anchoring these construction events to a specific climatic shift that modern geology confirms. The phrasing uses a verb form that indicates a singular defining event. The grammatical construction is the same one used in the Palermo Stone to describe the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, a one-time historical boundary. The scribe is marking a before and after moment in geological time, then tying construction activity to the before period. The fourth element, carved along the western edge where plaster damage has made portions difficult to read, describes what these builders left behind. The text states they placed within the deep stone the knowledge of measure and the knowledge of the stars, sealed until the time of opening. The glyph for knowledge is paired with the determinative for writing or records, not wisdom. It's describing stored information. The phrase sealed until the time of opening uses a future tense construction rare in Old Kingdom inscriptions, and then comes the line they always skip. The passage specifies that these chambers are located beneath the place where the sun strikes the western plateau at the moment of balance. The moment of balance refers to the equinox. The phrase describes where the sun strikes the western plateau at equinox. From Giza, the equinox sunset aligns with the western horizon directly behind the Sphinx. The inscription is giving coordinates using astronomical landmarks. The hieroglyphs were carved 4,600 years ago. In 1993, a team led by geologist Robert Schoch analyzed water erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure and concluded that the weathering predates the conventionally accepted construction date by thousands of years, possibly to a period of heavy rainfall that ended around 7,000 BCE. The pattern carved into the Sphinx bedrock matches erosion caused by sustained precipitation, not wind and sand. Schoch presented his findings to the Geological Society of America. Mainstream Egyptology dismissed the work immediately. But here's what makes this stranger. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project at the Great Pyramid used muon radiography to detect a massive void above the Grand Gallery, a previously unknown space roughly 30 meters long. The team included researchers from Nagoya University in Japan, the French HIP Institute, and Cairo University under Mehdi Tayoubi and Kunihiro Morishima. They published the finding in the journal Nature. The void sits exactly where Old Kingdom temple inscriptions describe the chamber of the first ones. That phrase appears in fragmentary temple texts at Abydos and in the pyramid texts. The modern scan found the void. The ancient text told you where to look. Now here's the suppression layer, and it's deep. First instance, around 1336 BCE. After the death of the pharaoh Akhenaten, the priesthood of Amun ordered his name systematically chiseled out of every monument, every temple wall, every official record. Akhenaten's religious reforms threatened the power structure, but his inscriptions at Amarna had referenced older texts that described the time before the dynastic period and the beings who built during that time. He claimed he was restoring knowledge from the time before the Count of Horus. Those references were erased along with his cartouches. The suppression wasn't just political, it was historical. Second instance, 391 CE. The Roman Emperor Theodosius ordered the destruction of the Serapeum of Alexandria, one of the largest repositories of ancient Egyptian texts. Coptic Christian mobs burned the library. Thousands of papyri were destroyed, including temple records that predated the Ptolemaic period. Church writings described the texts as heretical because they described a history of Egypt that extended too far back, a history that couldn't fit into the biblical timeline. The Serapeum had housed Egyptian astronomical records spanning thousands of years. Those records are gone. Third instance, 1798 to 1801. Napoleon's Egyptian expedition produced the multi-volume Inscription de l'Egypte. The published edition is extensive, but several volumes of inscriptions cataloged during the expedition were never released publicly. French scholars noted in private correspondence that certain temple texts contained chronologies that disturbed the accepted history. Those volumes remain in restricted archives at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. Researchers can request access, but independent researchers are routinely denied. Fourth instance, 1858 to 1881. Auguste Mariette, the first director of the Egyptian Antiquities Service, implemented strict controls over excavation and publication. Mariette personally suppressed several papyri that referenced pre-dynastic construction. His justification, recorded in a letter to the French Academy in 1867, was that these texts would confuse the public understanding of Egypt's development. One papyrus discovered at Saqqara in 1863 described the construction of the first stone temple by beings of great height during the time before the kings wore the double crown. Mariette classified it as mythological and transferred it to storage. The papyrus was assigned catalog number CG5891. It has never been exhibited. The pattern isn't coincidence, it's curation. And this is where it gets disturbing. In 1993, Rudolf Gantenbrink, a German robotics engineer, sent a small robot equipped with a camera up the southern shaft of the Queen's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid. The robot traveled 65 meters and encountered a limestone door with copper fittings. Gantenbrink's footage was broadcast globally. He requested permission to continue the exploration. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority, then under Zahi Hawass, denied the permit. 9 years passed. In 2002, a second robot drilled through the door. Behind it was another door. The project was halted. Gantenbrink was asking a specific question: what is at the end of the shaft, and does it connect to the chamber described in the pyramid texts as the resting place of the first builders? He never got to answer it. The Scan Pyramids team faced similar resistance. After announcing the Big Void discovery in 2017, they requested permission to conduct exploratory drilling. As of 2024, no permit has been granted. Mehdi Tayyubi stated in a 2019 interview that the delay was due to political and archaeological sensitivities. The void remains untouched. Now let me be clear, I'm not saying ancient Egyptians had electricity, or alien help, or technology we don't have today. The hieroglyphs aren't an engineering manual, but what they describe, when read as the engineers and stonecutters of the time would have read them, matches construction techniques and measurements that modern Egyptologists still cannot fully replicate. The precision of the Great Pyramid's alignment to true north, accurate to within 1/15 of a degree, requires surveying knowledge that shouldn't exist in 2500 BCE according to the standard timeline. The hieroglyphs describe those who were before as the ones who knew the measure of the sky. That's not mythology, that's surveying. And then there's this, the Turin King List, a papyrus from the 19th dynasty currently held in the Egyptian Museum in Turin as catalog number CAT 1874, lists the rulers of Egypt in chronological order. Before the historical pharaohs, before Narmer, the papyrus lists dynasties of gods and spirits who ruled for thousands of years. Mainstream Egyptology treats this section as mythological preamble, a religious framework to legitimize royal authority. But the list is structured identically to the historical section. Same format, same grammatical construction, same reign year counts. The section listing the gods uses the exact same verb forms and administrative language as the section listing Ramesses II and Seti IV. The only difference is the timescale. The pre-dynastic kings are listed with reigns of 3,000 years, 700 years, 500 years, impossibly long by human standards. But the list treats them as history, not myth. The Palermo Stone, a 5th dynasty annal fragment now split between museums in Palermo, Cairo, and London, contains the same structure. Pre-dynastic rulers listed with reign lengths, followed by the phrase, "before the count of years was known." These are official royal records, carved by the same scribes who documented verified history. They're treating the pre-dynastic period as history, not myth. The scribes weren't confused. They knew the difference between mythology and administrative record. The Book of the Dead is mythology. The king lists are administrative. Different texts, different purposes, different grammar. What we're looking at is a consistent claim across multiple sources, separated by centuries. The Saqqara panel from the 3rd dynasty, the pyramid texts from the 5th dynasty, the Turin King List from the 19th dynasty, the Palermo Stone from the 5th dynasty, all describe a period before the accepted beginning of Egyptian civilization. All describe builders of exceptional physical scale. All describe structures buried beneath the plateau. And all were systematically suppressed, restricted, or dismissed by institutional Egyptology at different points across 2,000 years. The chambers are still sealed. The big void above the Grand Gallery is still unentered. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted at the Sphinx in 1991 by Thomas Dobecki and John Anthony West detected rectangular cavities beneath the right paw and between the paws, consistent with constructed chambers. The anomalies showed right-angle edges. Natural limestone doesn't fracture in right angles. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority acknowledged the findings but has not authorized excavation. The Saqqara panel states that the remains of the first builders rest in deep chambers beneath the western plateau. The modern instruments found the chambers. The ancient text told you they were there. The evidence isn't hidden because it doesn't exist. It's hidden because it does exist, and what it suggests doesn't fit the model. The model says Egyptian civilization emerged suddenly around 3100 BCE and peaked with the pyramids by 2500 BCE. But the Egyptian sources themselves describe an inheritance. Knowledge passed down from an earlier time, structures built on older foundations, and when modern technology finally looks beneath the surface, it finds exactly what those ancient sources described. Voids where chambers should be, erosion patterns that predate the official timeline, cavities beneath monuments that align with the locations specified in texts. What's buried under the sand isn't a mystery. The texts tell you what's there, the scans confirm the text. What's buried under the sand is a decision. Someone decided you're not allowed to look.